himself. I had the pleasure of meeting him a year or two ago, and it's made an impact. We have some close friends. Smokey in the back over there is a friend of mine, and he's a friend of Carlito's, and Brandon is a friend of Carlito's. And like the way this works here is we're all connected. So if one of us does better, all of us do better. You might not call him for a job, or maybe you can, you never know. But we're here to network, build upon each other's strengths, move away from each other's weaknesses, and as a unit, move up together. And this is an inclusive event. It's African American History Month, but African American history is American history, and we don't want to turn around and say, we didn't have a chance to do this, and now we want a chance to do that, and now you're not included. That's not what this is. This is inclusive. This is a celebration of the people we love, and for you all being here, we're happy to hear you, and happy that you're here and love all races and creeds and colors that support what we're trying to do. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So now, without further ado, for those of you that don't know his resume, he's going to start off a few years ago and bring you up to speed as to what he's done so far and what he's up to most importantly, what he's up to next. Now, he also, aside from being a writer and a creative, he's also a filmmaker, and we were lucky enough to share his film last year. We didn't share it this year because many of the same people have come back, but he's going to tell you a little bit about his film and how you can find it or how you can get in touch with him to learn more about the film. And so I've said enough. Let's hear from one of the men we're here to see.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here, by the way. Thank you. I'm Brandon Easton. I've been working in comics since 2002, and I've been working in Hollywood, whatever you want to call it, the entertainment industry since around 2010 or 11 or so. I'm originally from Baltimore. I was a school teacher in New York City. I taught history and economics for 6 years. I moved out here in 2008 to pursue my dream of being a screenwriter. The film he's talking about is called Brave New Souls, Black Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of the 21st Century. I did it because I had so many friends who were writers, male and female, who were, some were New York Times bestsellers, some were, showrunners, some created animated series, yet nobody seemed to know who these people were. And what I find in pop culture, particularly in coverage, we get the same 3 or 4 people over and over again who jump out in front of cameras. But they don't ever look at the showrunners, the managers, the directors, the producers, the financiers sometimes who bring this stuff together, which are extremely important things, And Brave New Souls came out in the spring of 2013. I premiered it at Cal State Los Angeles at EagleCon, which is a convention about diversity and literacy, and it's at Cal State LA over there in off of the 10 freeway. Oh, sorry, wherever that is, over there by the 10 freeway. During that time, however, before that even, I worked on the Thundercats reboot for Warner Brothers Animation in 2011. I worked on a couple of Transformers animated series. Then from there, I did a lot of comic book stuff. And my biggest credit thus far is working on season 2 of Marvel's Agent Carter. That was on ABC. After that, I've been the only American writer or writer in the Western world to write Vampire Hunter D, which is a very popular anime. And we're in the process of adapting that in a bunch of different ways. I also did 2 new animated things for Marvel, which I can't discuss because Marvel has a very locked down non-disclosure agreement system. Yeah.
I'll turn it off.
Yeah, you're funny. But I didn't say the names of it. So I'm working on that type of stuff. So basically, what I try to do is not only illuminate the background of the business, because a lot of times folks don't understand that it's not what you think it is. It's all about money, ultimately. It's all it's ever about. All this stuff is awesome, but if it didn't make somebody money, it wouldn't exist, or the potential to make someone money. And that was the biggest lesson I learned after spending time in this city, and particularly in the entertainment industry. It's not about what we want, what we think. I always tell the story of I used to be the world's biggest Transformers fan until 1999, when I met the guy who was the showrunner of Transformers Beast Wars. His name is Bob Sker, or Robert Sker. And as a Transformers fan, I only wanted it to be like how I wanted it to be. And I ran up to him after the panel and started like, hey, why didn't you do this? And he just turns to me and he says, that's because this is what Hasbro wanted. That was the end of the conversation. Because Hasbro paid him to tell the story that they wanted to tell. Because animation costs millions of dollars. And if you remember, Beast Wars was all CGI. It's one of the third or fourth shows in history that were all CGI after Reboot, which was a popular series. Mainframe is the name of the Canadian studio who did Beast Wars and a bunch of other stuff. There was another show. It was Mainframe, Reboot. It was Reboot, Beast Wars, and there was another show. The Roughnecks, the Starship Troopers Chronicles.
Oh,
yes.
That was the third show that they did that nobody watched, which is one of the greatest animated shows ever made.
Really?
I watched
Absolutely.
every episode.
You should watch. You know what I'm talking about.
What's it called? Starship
It's
Troopers?
based off of
Roughnecks.
The Roughnecks.
The novels.
The novels.
Straight up. It's a straight up adaptation.
Okay.
Because they go from planetary system to planetary system, and those are story arcs. So that when they're on Mercury,
Each
that's a
season
story
is
arc.
like a different planet.
Right. When they're on Mars, that's a story arc. When they
good
get
concept.
to Venus, and when they get to the outer...
Planet that too. Earth.
Planet that too, right? And Earth, right?
Every episode.
There you go. So...
There'll be a quiz after.
Right. So basically, for me, it's been a constant wake-up call and an awakening and an illumination of how things actually operate versus what I actually believed. And that was the thing that really, I had to experience a paradigm shift from fan to creator. And I feel that that's the thing that will help a lot of people, because you see people online arguing all day long and yelling, and I'm like, do you realize that those folks, they don't care about what anyone says online? They don't. They really don't. The only thing that really pushes the needle in any direction is money. So if they feel as though not having people of color in something will make them money, they won't have people of color in it. If they feel like, for example, Black Panther is like for example, we're all on the eve of Black Panther. Going to be huge. But there was a thought that it might not make money. But now we realize that's no longer the case. It's going to make money. Marvel upper level are not what I would consider liberal or progressive people. The people who run it, the guy who owns Marvel gave Trump $1 million during the campaign season. $1 million.
I'm sorry. Those in the cheap seats couldn't hear that. Can you repeat that again?
$1 million.
The guy from whom gave the what?
Who owns Marvel gave Trump $1 million.
I was not aware of that.
Yes. So and I'm not judging. I mean, whatever. It's what happens.
Each his own, of course.
But my point being is that there is no progressive anything going on behind the scenes. It ain't like there are people, let's bring more people in. No, it's a financial decision.
Wow.
And that's what I always try to get through to people is that no matter what you think it is, I've worked at Marvel. I know, I've met the people at the top. They don't care about anything on Twitter. They don't care about anything on Facebook unless it loses them money. And to this date, it has not.
So I mean, it seems pretty simple when you say that the bottom line is basically what they're concerned with. Like I've gone to the Fox lot and
Yes.
done scene screeners,
Yep.
and when they pick the people that they want to question about the plot, I've never gotten picked, and sometimes I'm sitting there like the kid in the class, like ooh, pick me. I never get picked.
But there's a reason for that.
You think it definitely?
I learned this years ago. One of my former mentors was a producer for David Letterman's show. His first job was to screen the audience. So he would go out to Broadway and 50-something, because it's kind of high up where Dave Letterman's theater was in Manhattan, and he would say, only get white people from the Midwest. That's why
more of them.
Well, no, because Dave Letterman's style of humor, they would laugh at. So if you ever saw a reverse shot of the audience, it was almost always all white for David Letterman in particular. Nobody else but David Letterman, because he felt that if he opened it up to a diverse audience, you might get a bunch of blacks or Latinos like, this dude ain't funny. I'm not kidding. And when I realized that's how it worked, that's when I realized it's more about marketing, it's about finance. Because ultimately, in order for David Letterman to remain viable, advertisers who pay for television shows, and this is another thing I learned, TV shows are not interrupted by commercials. Commercials are interrupted by TV shows. That's how you have to think about it. Yes. Television in its earliest sense, and radio were all brought to you by such and such. If you watch the earliest TV series, particularly The Honeymooners and Amos and Andy, early days of television, I'm talking about the 50s, it was always the Texaco Hour, or the, who was the other, Hess.
Just soap operas in general.
Yeah, all soap operas came from detergent commercials would pay for shows to be made because they wanted people to watch the commercial. That's the history of television. That's what you learn. You go to college and you take Media 101, the first thing you learn is everything is advertiser based. Everything. Watch Mad Men. Mad Men told you, it was I didn't like Mad Men, but if you watch Mad Men, it is the story of how advertising controls the world. That's ultimately what it is. This is why shows operate the way they are. So when you think about TV, don't think about, oh, damn, I gotta watch a commercial. The commercial's paid for the show. That's why ratings count. Why would ratings matter? Ratings wouldn't matter if they weren't advertisers, because advertisers want their product to be seen by the most amount of people. And these are the things that you learn when you get a little bit on the inside. For example, I used to teach this to my students. When you watch WWE, what commercials are on WWE? Fast food, snacks, video games, soda. Why? Because who's watching WWE? People who would likely buy fast food, snack chips, soda, and other garbage stuff like that. When you watch, let's say, Scandal, what's on Scandal? Feminine hygiene product commercials, car commercials, security systems for your house. Why? Because there's a different demographic who's going to be watching it. Everything is based upon consumer demographics. And that's the reality. And it applies to race, it applies to gender, it applies to sexual orientation.
So now,
and that's how it works.
So now, okay, Brandon Easton,
yeah.
How do you improve your demand? As a creative person, you're a supplier, how do you build your demand?
If you asked me that 10 years ago, I could give you an answer. I can't, it's very hard now to answer that question because there's more than one way of getting people to know who you are. Ultimately, I will give you an example. Issa Rae, who did the show Insecure on HBO.
Woo!
She did a web series called Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. She did it with her own money at first, right?
Her brother was behind the camera and they was running all through Inglewood and all that.
Shooting everywhere they could, right?
Cleaners and Chinese restaurants and everywhere.
Now, the deal with that is that she answered a demand. There were no normal black people on TV for a long time. Still aren't really, not really, but she wanted to show black folks who may be working class or live in the quote-unquote inner city or hood or whatever, who have jobs or are college educated, who just get up and do the things they do every day, like life. But that's not how we are perceived. But she wanted to change that, and she did by putting it online, and next thing you know, she had 1 million something views, and then she did Kickstarter, got her second season funded, and then Oprah and all these other people saw it, and Larry Wilmore, they saw it and was like, yo, this girl got to get put on. That's an example of how to do it yourself. So ultimately, creating your own material and finding your own audience is the only thing that can change it, because that's when they come for you. When you're knocking on their door, they're like, stop knocking on my door. But when you have something that they want, they will roll out red carpets, back up dump trucks to you. You know, it's ridiculous. That's how it works.
So now for instance, you created a name for yourself with, was it Transformers Deviant? Is that the name?
Deviants. Deviations.
Deviations.
Yeah.
So that was a well-known book. It did well.
Yeah, it did.
Right?
Yeah.
So now is the plan to create more books through the massive system, and then also when they go to follow you on Twitter, or when they go to follow you, it's like, oh, I got this other thing that was hot, but I got this thing over here. So is it a bait and switch? Not without it
I know what
sounding,
you're saying.
you know what I'm saying? Redirection of information.
Because I did Transformers Deviations, I was given the M.a.s.k reboot for IDW, Mobile Armored Strike Command, based on the 80s cartoon.
Do y'all remember M.a.s.k?
Oh, yeah.
He brought it back as a comic book. It's on the shelves here today.
I have it here.
He's got it up front.
And also,
how much is M.a.s.k on sale for today?
I have every issue individually priced, like $4, and I have the collection.
That was our commercial here today.
Yeah.
So make sure y'all check his book out, and he'll sign it for you and everything.
Absolutely. And what I did, though, was I changed the white hero into a black man. And that caused a lot of trouble. But I felt like, if you look at all of the Hasbro stuff, It's all white male heroes. All I wanted to do was have one black male. I turned Matt Tracker into an African American. Pissed off a bunch of fans, but guess what? The first few issues sold well. You know,
Big splash.
And I met so many young people of all backgrounds who were like, "Wow, this is so cool that he's black." Because for a long, and when I was growing up, I didn't have the only black male hero I had was Lando Calrissian, and even he betrayed the heroes. You know, he didn't redeem himself until Return of the Jedi. So, other than the Cosby Show, which is a
Bro,
whole
what was he
different
supposed to do against Vader?
I have a whole story about that.
He was gonna get choked out like
No,
everybody else.
but if Luke didn't come, he would have saved him. Luke showing up ruined everything. That's a whole other story. But
That's a cool deviation. You should write that.
Dark Horse already did it. They did it. It was Infinities.
Billy D
Yeah.
broke my heart. I
Right.
had never been, at that age, I had never been betrayed by a friend before. Okay? Except, we won't even get into that.
Right.
But, never tell your homies your plans if you really like the best girl in school.
Bam.
I'll just put it like that.
That is true.
But Billy D broke my heart, man.
A lot of people. But
So now you have a hero that, this changing this hero to a black guy, is he, does he have the same traits as before? Is it just simple color, or have you
No.
changed his background, or what?
no, in the original Matt Tracker, he was just a do-gooder. The version I created was somebody who was a genius, but didn't. But the death of his father sent him over the edge. So he decided to become a do-gooder, but around the world. So he joined like Doctors Without Borders. He did irrigation in Sudan. He went out and did all this stuff, but he did it kind of as sort of like Banksy. He was kind of breaking the law, but doing social justice stuff.
Tight.
So that's when in this version, Miles Mayhem, the bad guy, he was the guy who led the original team of vigilantes in the new Hasbro universe. And he recognized Matt Tracker as a potential bad guy, but when he realized he couldn't corrupt him, that's when there was a split between m.a.s.k, Mobile Armor Strike Command, and Venom, the bad guys
Okay.
in that universe.
That's the name
Yeah.
of their elite.
Right.
That's their Cobra, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term.
Called Venom, which is interesting because now in the IDW verse, Venom has merged with Cobra, and Mask is merged with G.I. Joe.
Really?
Yep, that's what happened.
Any G.I. Joe fans here?
I don't know.
They all died out. I'm a G.I. Joe fan
Yeah.
still. Okay, so now like you have somebody like an Axel Alonso who comes in and shakes things up. I'm gonna make this one black. I'm gonna reread Iron Man is now Iron.
I don't know.
Iron what?
Heart.
Iron Heart.
Yeah.
Is that the answer to just turn the heroes black, or
I mean, okay, see, that's a damn good question. My problem with that is this: that when we do create new heroes of color, nobody supports us. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, I've created. I have an original graphic novel with a Latino lead, and his mentor is a black, like the Obi-Wan character is a black guy, right? I've had so much trouble selling that because people just assume if they haven't heard of me, that I don't have talent.
right?
But the only way to be heard of is if somebody at Marvel and DC hires me. But Marvel and DC won't hire me because of a variety of reasons. And I had this conversation earlier, and I was just
Are
saying,
you difficult to work with?
no one I've ever worked with has said that.
Okay.
At least not to my face. But no, I'm not difficult to work with. But there is a belief. I always use the quarterback scenario that back in the day, you didn't have a lot of black quarterbacks because people believed that quarterbacking was an intelligent position.
Okay.
Someone possessing intelligence should be a quarterback.
Okay.
Which basically says black people aren't very smart. That's what people think.
Yeah,
I mean, no one
that's what
says
it
that.
sounds like.
But my experience is that people don't assume African Americans specifically are just stupid. That's been my experience. Because when I meet people and they realize I'm not stupid, then they don't know how to deal with me because their assumption is that all African American men, particularly large ones, are criminals or morons. That's been my experience.
So outside of
You know.
Dave Chappelle and Issa Rae, intelligent comedy has kind of has made a strike into the masses.
Sort of.
What about intelligent drama? Have you seen that yet?
But I mean in comics.
In comic books.
Now, okay,
So are these intellectual based stuff that you're
well,
bringing?
I'll go back to the Cosby Show. There's no fear of harmless blacks on television who will not be walking around your neighborhood. Because these are actors who are millionaires who you see on TV.
Right.
The fear is when a guy like me, who is accomplished, just walks around the neighborhood, but no one knows that. They just assume the worst. That's what I don't know how you change that. Because I don't just get white people assuming the worst. I get Latinos, Asians, and other black people assuming the worst. And I think that we need to understand that we've all absorbed anti-black bias. And that is in hiring, it is in government, it is in city resource management.
And like you said,
It is in
within
infrastructure,
ourselves.
and then within us. But I'm saying it spreads. So to answer that question, and the reason I'm saying this is because I don't feel people are ever honest about their bigotry. You know? So, and I don't mean, and I'm not saying everybody's racist, but we all have biases. We all have biases. Where we live, where we eat, where we're not going to take that road. I'm deeply prejudiced against the 405. If the 405 was a person, I would burn it at the stake. That's my bigotry. But I'm okay with that. I'm also bigoted towards being in certain environments.
I'm not the 10. The 10 I don't like.
I can take the 10.
Okay.
I can take the 10. It's the 405 I gotta die. But anyway. But ultimately what I'm saying is people approach black creators as if though the default is going to be poorly written or poorly drawn or poorly told stories. And until we get over that, it's very difficult for black books to sell. That's why Marvel has to go out and get Pulitzer Prize winners and New York Times bestsellers to get people to buy the book, because if you just got a black person, they'd be like, well, I haven't heard of this person, I ain't buying it.
Oh,
they ain't too smart.
Okay,
you know?
I don't want to, I don't, like I said, we came here, this is a celebration.
Yeah, sure.
But what I want to do is, I heard you say something without getting too far deep into it.
Sure.
Whether you be black, white,
Right.
Asian, Indian, creed, color, gender.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you think they simply do not let most comic book writers go back and write the screenplay?
Oh, I can answer that. Oh, that's an easy one. Because most people who write comics don't have any understanding of cinematic storytelling. Like if you take somebody who's only a comic book writer,
Yes.
and you tell them write a motion picture screenplay
Yes.
for a major studio, unless they have a real screenwriter sitting next to them, a comic book writer generally does not know how to write and vice versa. Because I'm doing a thing on March 25th at the Writers Guild
Oh, great.
about how, if you're a screenwriter, how you write a comic book script. They're two very different disciplines, you know? So it's not, you don't really get, like let's say Greg Pak, fantastic writer. I don't think he's ever written TV or film. He may have, but I mean, from what I understand, he has not. You would have to teach him how to write a screenplay for TV or movies. I know movie screenwriters who can't write television.
Can you write? Now you've written film.
Yes.
Film,
Yes.
and you've written comic books.
Yes.
Now, have you written for TV in a group setting? And why not take that approach so that the core comic book fans are still happy and the moviegoer fans are still happy?
To answer your first question, yes. I worked on season 2 of Agent Carter.
Okay.
And that's a writer's room, and it's a collaborative effort. Now, that's
Agent Carter was pretty cool.
Thank you. I wish it was still here. Now, why don't you? Okay. That's called writing by committee. Marvel and Paramount do that now. Which is why, but when you do that, you take away what's known as heart. Goodfellas just showed up again on Netflix.
Okay.
One of my favorite films of all time.
Me too.
Right?
Lorraine Bracco.
Yeah, good God, she was awesome. Everybody was. That whole cast was good. But when you look at how that's written, Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi wrote the book about Henry Hill.
Okay.
You have not only knowledge, but you could tell Scorsese really wanted to make that story, and nobody got in his way of telling that story. When you write Transformers 57, whatever it's going to be now, you've got 10 writers in a room. You've got a bunch of people who never read a Transformers comic or ever saw a cartoon of the show telling you what's in it, which is why they look like walking trash cans now. They don't look geometrically viable.
And when they transform, it's not just
like-
look believable or anything. Yeah.
You know, that's what
I'm
it looks
a man.
like when they
I'm a
transform.
car. Yeah.
You know, but that's why you have that situation. And here's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. The biggest argument I ever got in my life was with an X-Men fan who didn't understand why the costumes didn't look like they do in the comic book. The original costumes were all black, like the Matrix, right?
Right.
Okay. And they still don't really look like the comic book. I mean, not really.
No.
There's a reason for that. And I try to explain this to him. When you're on a set, right, depending on what kind of film stock you use, what kind of filters you put on the camera, what kind of lighting you use, certain colors don't show up on camera. Everybody shoots on digital now, right? HD.
Yes.
So certain colors would burn out the camera when you put light on it. Also, you have to remember, they're shooting in front of a green screen, which they'll eventually project.
So Rogue's costume automatically, which is green and yellow,
She would look ridiculous.
she could not be shot on green screen or blue screen.
Thank you. So I tried to explain that to somebody, and they didn't get it. They were like, well, still. I'm like, no, there's no still. You know, you have a person called a director of photography,
I know that
more
now.
better known
DP.
as cinematographer.
Oh, lighting.
Okay.
The cinematographer carries around a book.
DP.
Oh, DP.
Layman.
They carry around a book, and what they'll do, you'll see them do this, and the costume people do this too, and they'll be flipping. You see them walking around set and they're flipping, and they're always putting something in front of the camera, and they're flipping, and they'll do this, and they'll be flipping. They're trying to see what colors will match your skin tone, so that when you go to the movies, you're not distracted by how dark or light somebody is. I'll give you a good example of this. Wesley Snipes.
Yes.
Wesley Snipes isn't as dark as you think he is. But because, no, let me explain this. When they light film for people, they light for the white characters, they don't light for Wesley. So if you lit for Wesley, you would have to put more light on it, and all the white people would be glowing. Unless you this is all film stuff, unless you put a certain filter over, and if you did that, the actual image might not look right. It might look like the Matrix, where everything was tinted green when you were in the Matrix, but the real world looked all like brown. There's a reason. They did that on purpose. Now that's why in the Matrix everybody wore black. You could not have a different color in that green tint other than black, or it wouldn't look right. This is what I'm trying to say. It goes deeper than what most people understand.
Yes.
There's a technical side and a financial side. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's reasons why things don't always look like the way they look. Is anybody who's watching my table? Is anybody watching my table? Oh, thank you. Just asking.
Steal everything.
No, it's my bags over there. That's that explanation. But I have any questions from the crowd? I mean,
Yeah, we're gonna take a few questions for the crowd.
Yeah.
I got one more that I think is a good one before we go to the crowd.
Yeah.
And
there's seats up here if you want to fill in, folks.
come on in, guys.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
And for all of you that are just joining us, I'm sitting here with Brandon Easton, writer, creator, and director.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, okay, so right now, I want to support you today. I go,
Thank you.
I buy m.a.s.k.
Thank you.
Right? What other books are on your table right now?
I have the first edition of Watson and Holmes. I have the Rick Leonardi, Walt Simonson black and white version of Watson and Holmes, which is the African American reinterpretation of the Sherlock Holmes mythos.
Okay.
But it's set in modern Harlem.
Oh, tight. I like
That's
that.
the last one I have.
Okay. And now, so I have that stuff. What's next? What's your Instagram account, first and foremost, for those of you that follow him on Instagram and Twitter? He
It's
dressed
Brandon.
up for y'all today. I've been watching his stories all week. It's pretty entertaining. So please tell us.
It's Brandon Easton Writer on Instagram. And on Twitter, it's at Brandon Easton.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was my main question. You can tell them what's next. Is there any questions from the crowd? Anybody?